Today we have a privilege to have with us Dr. Yein as our speaker for the month of June under the K. Sri Dhammananda Lecture Series 2012. The theme for this year is Why Should I? And today's Dr. Yin's Dhamma talk entitled Why Should I Be Good?
Why should I be good? We all know we should be good. We know we must try our best, do our best to be good. All good religions teaches us to be good. But why? Why should we be good? That is the question. Have you ever asked yourself why we should be good? Okay, I'm going to share with you some commonly perceived answers that we receive, or to answers to this question of why should I be good. Venerable is here. Good evening, Venerable. I seek your permission to share the Dhamma with my friends. Thank you. Right, so let's look at some commonly perceived answers on why should I be good. I'm going to give you 3 answers that people normally give to this question. First, why should I be good? Because somebody's watching, so I better behave myself or I might be punished if I'm bad. This is a very common answer. You always hear it in small children, right? You hear it in small children. So there are 2 things here. Somebody's watching. We fear someone's watching. All right? In some religions, they say God is watching you from a distance. You fear God. They even tell you God-fearing. We are God-fearing people. So we fear somebody's watching. So we better behave ourselves. Now, if we do that, we are behaving out of fear of being watched, right? The next part, if I don't behave myself, I might be punished. That's also acting out of fear, isn't it? That's what little children do. You know, the other day, I was in the supermarket with my son. My son is already 22 years old now. And I thought this is a thing of the past, but it's not, you know. We saw this mother with this child sitting in the trolley. You know how children will sit in the trolley when the mother goes shopping? And the child was taking things from the aisle, you know, taking things from the shelf. And the mother said to the child, don't take, or the police will catch you. I thought this is a thing of the past, you know, when we were small, our grandmothers tell us, don't take, you don't behave, the Bengali will come and catch you. That's what Chinese grandmothers used to say, because the Bengali wears a turban and they have a beard and they're frightening, so they think that will frighten us. Now, in this day and age, my son heard this mother telling the child, you don't take, you take, the police will catch you. Then my son came up to me and asked me, Mommy, why is it that I've never heard you say that to me before? So I asked him, have I ever said that to you before? He said, no. How come you've never said that to us before? I said, it's because that's not the reason why you should behave. Not out of fear. And very often, even parents nowadays, they use fear. They use fear to make the children behave. And if you look at the way society runs, they use a lot of fear. Let's take, for example, the speed limit. Why is there a speed limit? Whether it's on the highway, on ordinary roads, there's a speed limit. Why is there a speed limit? It is to maintain peace, to ensure safety of the drivers, safety of the pedestrians. That's why there's a speed limit, right? Unfortunately, some people don't understand. That's the reason why there's a speed limit. So they need speed traps. They need the 300 ringgit fine if you break the speed limit. And you see, when it comes to Chinese New Year, Hari Raya and all that, there'll be emails circulating. Hey, beware of this road, now this stretch to this stretch, there is speed trap. Or they have those signals, you know, where you shine your lights, that means there's police, you know, police watch and all that. What if there's no speed trap? So people behave, people follow the speed limit because they fear the speed trap, because they fear being punished. What happens when the speed traps are removed? People go like the wind, right? They don't care anymore because these people have not been educated to understand why there is a speed limit. So they're merely obeying the speed limit out of fear. Fear of being caught, fear of being punished. Okay? So we see that's not a good reason why we should be good. Not out of fear, not out of shame, and not out of fear of being punished. Let's look at the next reason. I should be good. Because if I'm good, I'll get some reward. This is the reward system. That also happens in the corporate sector, in our job, even in our homes. When one of my friends, when the children were very young, she used to boast and say, my children are so well behaved. But she told us how she got her children to behave through a reward system. It works like this. If you turn off the lights, you get 50 cents. If you turn off the tap, you get 50 cents. If you do better things, if you wash the dishes in the kitchen, you get 2 ringgit. And that way, she got her children to behave. That's the reward system. Now, what happens when there are no more rewards? The children will probably say, why should I do? You're not rewarding me anymore. So similarly, some people behave themselves, some people are good because they think there's some reward. Whether the reward is karma points, I get good karma in return, brownie points, it's like earning brownie points, or whether it's, my next life I'll be reborn in heaven and so on, it's still a reward system. So we are still behaving because we want something in return. That's acting out of greed. It's greed. So the reason is still not very noble. Now what about the third one? I better be good because all great teachers say we must be good, so we better be good. That sounds like an unthinking person, right? A person who doesn't rationalize, a person who doesn't think. It's true, all great teachers say we have to be good, but we are not being good because of that. What happens if we don't have a good teacher? And the teacher tells us, you better do this. This is the right thing to do. And we don't think, so we just blindly do it. That is exactly what happened to Angulimala. Angulimala, the bandit? He had a teacher who told him that if he collected these little fingers and made it into a garland, he would have some spiritual powers. So Angulimala did not think for himself. He didn't even think for a moment that killing people for their little fingers is bad. So all he was going for was to get those spiritual powers that his teacher would give him. So he murdered people and got the little finger. So that would happen if we simply believe any teacher. So we are acting out of delusion. We are not seeing things correctly. We are not seeing things in the right way. We are merely following orders. So that's also not what we want, right? So these are some of the common answers to the question, why should I be good? So now, knowing that these answers are not very noble, they do not come from a very noble motivation or intention, then let's answer the question again. Why should I be good? What about this answer? I should be good because I know it is the right thing to do. The key word here is I know. We all know. We all know what is right and wrong, don't we? Sometimes even little children know. Because there's something deep inside all of us that tells us what is right and wrong. In English, we call that thing inside us, we call it the conscience. The conscience. We all have that conscience that will tell us whether it's right or wrong. All right? So, what about this answer? We are good because we know it is the right thing to do. Therefore, we do good. It is the right thing to do. Now, in Buddhist teachings, you don't have a word for conscience. But the Buddha explains it differently. The Buddha says there are 2 qualities in us, inside us, that guides us to do the right thing. And these 2 qualities are called hiri and ottappa. Hiri and ottappa. Now the Buddha calls them the 2 inner guardians. Again, why inner? Why guardians? They guard us from doing wrong. Why inner? Because they are inside us. That's our conscience. And the Buddha explains it as 2 qualities, hiri and ottappa. And the Buddha even calls it the protectors of the world. Think for a moment. These 2 inner qualities that are in us, how does it protect the world? If everyone acts with their conscience, no one would do wrong. If everyone listens to that inner voice in them, they will know what is the right thing and they will do the right thing. So definitely the whole world will be protected. So that's how important these two inner qualities are. Hiri or Natapa. Yeah? The protectors of the world. Now, in my 6 years of giving Dhamma talks, I have never ever spoken about Hiri and Otapa until a few weeks ago over in SJBA, where I took up this title and I decided to speak on it. Now, the reason why I have never spoken about Hiri and Otapa is that when I look up the translations, I don't know Pali, so I need to rely on the English translation of the suttas in order to give a Dhamma talk. When I look up the translations of Hiri and Otapa, this is what I see. Hiri is moral shame, and Otapa is moral fear. And I'm not comfortable with this translation simply because I question, why is it moral shame and moral fear? Has the Buddha ever taught us to be good because it's shameful to be bad? Why is it shame? When do we feel shame? We feel shame after we've done something wrong, right? So how can we use shame to guide us? What guides us must be something that happens before we even do wrong, right? Shame only happens after we've done wrong. We've done something wrong. Oh gosh, I'm ashamed of myself. So I was never happy with the translation, moral shame. That is why I've never been comfortable giving this talk. That's why I've never given this talk. Otapa is worse, because it's always translated as moral fear. Fear, the Buddha has never taught us to use fear as a deterrent for wrongdoing. Nowhere in the suttas did the Buddha ever say, if you do wrong, you go to hell. If you do wrong, you rot in hell, you burn in hell. Never. The Buddha always says, reflect. Reflect upon your doing. Before you do something, ask yourself, what are the consequences on others? What are the consequences on ourselves? That's how the Buddha taught us to reflect. To reflect before we do something. Never to refrain from something because of fear. Fear of what? So I was never comfortable with this translation. So when I thought, I still want to do a talk on this, I consulted Bhante Kumara of SBS. He's like a walking dictionary, of the Dhamma, so you can consult him on anything. So I wrote to him and I said, Bhante, I'm not comfortable with the translations that I see, but everywhere I read, it is moral shame and moral fear. I said, I'm just not comfortable with it. Could you just please help me out here? Please enlighten me on this. And Bhante replied, and to my relief, do you know what he said? He said he is also not comfortable with this translation. So he also questions these traditional translations. So we have every right to question. Remember the Kalama Sutta? Always question. The Buddha always invited us to question. So he says he has never been happy with this translation either. So he gave me what he thinks is the correct translation. And that is what I want to share with you today. So Hiri is not moral shame. Otapa is not moral fear. Hiri is honor. It's honor. We do the right thing because it is the honorable thing to do. Otapa is concern, not fear. Not fear, but concern. We have concern. When we do something, our concern is what are the consequences of our action. If it's a good action, the consequences will be good. If it's a bad action, the consequences will be bad. It will be bad for others. It will be bad for ourselves. So we have concern. So Hiri and Otapa now means honor and concern. So we do things because of honor and concern. And Bhante Kumara gave a very good example. It's very simple, but it's a really, really good example. He says, remember during the Japanese tsunami, after the tsunami occurred, the Japanese people lined up for their food. Why did they line up for their food? Everybody is desperate for food, and food is such a basic need. When you're hungry, you do all kinds of desperate things to get food. And yet, the Japanese people lined up in a straight line for their food. No pushing, no looting, none of that. They lined up. What made them line up? Honor. Because it's the honorable thing to do. It is the right thing. It is the proper thing to do. Therefore, they line up. Despite all the self-interest, I'm hungry, I need food. No pushing, nothing of the sort, no cutting queue. Line up. Because it's the honorable thing to do. Concern. Concern for everybody who is lining up. So first come, first serve. You line up first, you're in front of me, you get the food. Concern for others. Alright? So, This is what guides us to do the right thing. So in the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha said the hiri and ottappa are inner qualities in us. They are already in us. We just need to look very deeply and use it to guide us. So that is hiri and ottappa, honor and concern. Now, the Buddha tells us in the Pabhasara Sutta, Pabhasara means luminous. The mind is naturally luminous. It is only clouded by visiting defilements. So this mind that we have, the citta, in Pali it's called citta, the mind that every one of us has, every living being has this mind. This mind is naturally luminous, pure, brightly shining. It is only clouded by visiting defilements. So what keeps this mind pure and luminous? These two inner qualities helps us. Honor and concern. So when we act with honor, we are doing the proper thing. We are doing the right thing according to our conscience. When we act with concern, it is always concern for others. It may be concern for ourselves as well, but it's always concern for others and ourselves. Then we are acting with compassion. We are concerned about the consequences of our actions. We are concerned about others. So that's acting with wisdom and compassion. That is the pure state of our mind. The mind is naturally luminous. Unfortunately, it's being clouded. It's clouded by greed, by anger, by hatred, by pride, by ego, envy, jealousy. It's clouded by all these defilements. And the good news here that they are visiting defilements. You see, this two simple sentences is so profound, you know. It's visiting. Those defilements are merely visiting. Okay? We may have absorbed them from the environment, from socialization and so on. They're merely visiting. They're not part of our luminous mind. So we just need to clear off these defilements. But we've got layers and layers of defilements accumulated after many, many cycles of rebirth, and that's why we're still stuck in samsara. Okay? It's very, very, very clouded. It's like a shining statue full of layers of rust. So these layers of rust are the defilements. So we need to clear off these defilements. And one of the ways is to act according to hiri and ottappa. So we stop doing wrongdoings. We act with honor and concern so that our actions are guided correctly by our conscience. So our conscience is what the Buddha was talking about when he talked about hiri and ottappa. Okay, now let's look at our spiritual path. Our spiritual path as Buddhists is guided by the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path is normally represented by this sort of pyramid, this stupa, or sitting Buddha. You always see the sitting Buddha represents the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path is divided into three areas where you have sila, samadhi, panya. Sila is morality. Now why is sila placed at the bottom? We always say sila is placed at the bottom. It's like the foundation, the base of the sitting Buddha. Then you have samadhi, mental cultivation. Then we have panya, which is wisdom. Now sila is morality. Why is morality the base? Why is it the base? What guides us in moral actions is actually hiri and ottappa, right? But why is that the base? Let's look at what Ajahn Chah teaches us. Ajahn Chah says, virtue is the basis. Virtue is sila. Morality, moral behavior is the basis. Virtue is at the heart of our practice. Keep the precepts. The 5 precepts actually represents the whole of sila. Keep the precepts. Now when we keep the precepts, it means we're doing the right thing. We're doing things based on our conscience. Our conscience tells us this is the right thing to do. We're doing things out of compassion for others. When we keep the precepts, our mind will become clear, kind, and quiet. We instill our mind. Because when we do wrong, just think of a time in the past when we've done wrong. Our conscience pricks us, right? We cannot sleep at night. We don't feel good. Our mind cannot become quiet. Samadhi is about quieting the mind, keeping it quiet, keeping it still. So if we don't have morality, our mind cannot become quiet. When it cannot become quiet, we cannot meditate. We will never be at peace. So that is why you see in the Noble Eightfold Path, sila is the foundation. We need morality in order to calm our mind, to keep our mind at ease and in peace. Right? So our late chief always reminded us, the sila, when we say sila, it means we practice the 5 precepts. That is the most basic for lay people. Some practice the 8 precepts. Monks practice 227 precepts. Okay, so their actions are even purer than us because they have so many precepts to keep. So let's just talk about the 5 precepts. What are the 5 precepts? Do not kill, do not steal, do not engage in sensual misconduct, do not lie, do not take intoxicants. These are the 5 precepts. Now when we practice these 5 precepts, late chief always reminded us, don't think of the 5 precepts as hindrances. I cannot drink, cannot tell a lie, cannot kill, cannot take money from the floor, cannot steal. Hindrances. Late chief always said, don't think of them as hindrances. Think of them as guardians, as protectors. When you have these precepts protecting you, it stops us from doing wrong. It's a reminder, like traffic lights, reminder, hey, stop, think. You're not doing right. Don't do that. It's not the right thing to do. See, for example, say there's a donation box somewhere here. Buddhist temple, open donation box, no need to lock, because nobody will steal. So say there's an open donation box here and people have put in money and there's a lot of money. And we walk into this hall. No one is looking. There is nobody in the hall. Except for the statue of the Buddha, which we know is not looking because it's just a statue, right? No one is looking. There is nobody peeping, nothing. We walk into this hall, then the door suddenly closes. We are all alone. How easy it is to take that money and put in our pocket and walk out. Nobody's looking. Any CCTV? No CCTV. Nobody's looking. We are so sure no one is looking. The temptation is there. The temptation is there. Nobody's looking. Take, put, walk out. Nobody knows. The temptation is always there. What stops us from doing it? It's hiri and otapa. We start to question, hiri, honor, is this an honorable thing to do? No, it's not. It's very dishonorable, it's stealing, it's wrong, so we don't want to do it. Concern. This money has been left by people for the temple, it may be for a very worthy cause, for the poor. How can I take this money away from them? I'm depriving them of the donation. Concern for others. So when we have hiri and otapa, it makes breaking the precept a very difficult thing now. We cannot break it because there's that reminder, hiri and otapa. Our conscience will remind us not to do it. All right? So it helps us. That's why the late chief used to tell us, don't look at the precepts as hindrances. It's not hindrances, it's guardians and protectors. It protects us from doing wrong. Alright? So that is the purpose of the 5 precepts. And late chief always reminds us also, when we used to ask him, how do you know that a person is a Buddhist? Really? How do you know that a person is a Buddhist? Not by his name, because we're Chinese, we keep our Chinese name. Some of us want to put a name in front of us, whatever, Vijaya Wong or something like that. You want to put a Pali name in front of us? Good, that's good, fine. But we don't have to. We don't have to. So, we can't tell whether a person is a Buddhist or not by his name. We can't tell from his appearance. No halo at the back, How do we tell that the person is a Buddhist? We can't tell. Say, are you wearing a Buddha pendant? Oh, if you are, you must be a Buddhist. Can I check your birth cert? What does it say? Your IC? Does it say you're a Buddhist? Does that make a person a Buddhist? It doesn't. So we used to ask late chief, what makes a person a Buddhist? And late chief said this, a Buddhist is a harmless person. So simple and yet so true. A Buddhist is someone who will not harm others. That's a Buddhist. And a person who does not harm others is a person who keeps the precepts. Because the 5 precepts keeps us from harming others. You see? So, that's how we tell whether a person is a Buddhist or not. That person is a harmless, not by what we wear, not by our name, none of those. If we are a harmless person, we are a Buddhist. Okay, so what is hiri? Hiri is when we ask ourselves, the inner voice there asks ourselves, is it proper? Is it right? If it's not proper, if it's not right, it's not honorable, don't do it. What is otapa? Otapa is when we ask ourselves, if I do this, what are the consequences to others and to myself? What are the consequences? We are concerned. We are concerned about the consequences. So these are the two that will guide us on the right path. It will guide us to keep the precepts. And again, quoting from Ajahn Chah, virtue is purity beyond all doubts. What we have doubts about, we should not do or say. Purity is beyond all doubts. This is virtue. So virtue is purity beyond all doubts. So when we have doubts, for example, we see money on the floor. This is always a very famous question, you know. When we talk about the second precept, we see money on the floor. Should we pick it up? We have doubts. Should we pick it up? It's not ours. If you ask me, I won't pick it up. Why is it I won't pick it up? Because it's not mine. Because the owner might come looking for it. It may be 10 ringgit, but it may be a child's savings for a whole month to buy something. The child might come looking for it. So I won't pick it up. I have no doubt about that. It's not mine, I shouldn't pick it up. If there's lost and found, I might pick it up and give it to lost and found. You see? So purity is beyond all doubts. When we have doubts, don't do it. That is the safest. Go and ask our teachers, go and ask the venerables if we have doubts. But the moment we have doubts, the best thing is, don't do it. Don't do it until we seek the answers and the clarifications. Now that is virtue. That is why the Buddha says, Hiri and Ottappa are protectors of the world. So Hiri is honor, Ottappa is concern. And the Buddha gives the simile of the iron rod. The Buddha says, imagine there's an iron rod. One end of the rod is full of excrement, feces. It's dirty. Like somebody has put it in cow dung. One end is full of excrement. The other end is burning hot. You wouldn't want to touch that rod. You wouldn't want to touch either end. That end that's full of excrement it represents dishonorable acts. Dirty, dishonorable, wrong acts. We don't want to touch that. We don't want to do that. The other end is burning hot because it's got consequences. If we touch it, we hurt ourselves. If other people touch it, hurt themselves. So one side is Hiri. The other side is Ottappa. So we don't want to touch this rod because one side is full of excrement, is the wrong things, we don't want to do it. The other side is burning hot, it will hurt people. So we don't want to touch it. So that is the simile used by the Buddha to describe Hiri and Ottappa. And this is what guides us in our actions. Okay, now honor, sometimes we think that honor is obeying laws. Unfortunately, laws are sometimes made by people. And some laws may not be very good. Now, I want to quote from Martin Luther King here. We all know who he is, yeah? Civil rights fighter in the US. He says, I'm going to read what he says. One who breaks an unjust law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for law. So this applies, not that I say we all go to prison for something. This applies even in our place of work, you know. Sometimes in our place of work, there are rules. But we know the rule is not right. Then we must have the courage to speak up. That is also the practice of Hiri, to do the honorable thing. Let me quote you a very simple example. Nothing like what Martin Luther King has done, you know, go to prison and all that. When I first came out as a teacher, I was assigned in a certain school in PJ, a very famous school, but all new teachers will be put in the last class. We will not be allowed to teach the best class. We have to teach the worst of the worst. So I was put form teacher of the last class in Form 4, where it's a whole bunch of gangsters. It's a whole bunch of gangsters in Form 4, and I was a young teacher. I was put in charge of that class. When I went in and looked at the boys, it scared me. Very scary looking. But what I found out was, these were all victims, you know. Victims of the school system, victims of social norms that has made them to be what they are. You know, and as I got to know them, I realized they are just victims of the school system. They didn't make it. They didn't make it in primary school, so they end up in the last class. And because of all this marginalization, they've always been the last class, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Since the school thinks I'm bad, I might as well be there, Since the school thinks I'm weak, I'll never be any good. So I was put in charge of this group of students. And after a while, I saw the good in them. I saw virtues in them. They were honest. They were good children. They're just weak in studies, and that's about it. But what would happen is that every time something happens in the school, straight away must be your class. My boys will get called up. My boys will get punished at assembly. Now that's a norm. That's a norm, And I felt it was unfair. So I spoke out for them. So after a while I became their protector. I spoke out for them. I spoke out for them because I know these children already. They are under me, under my care. So I spoke up for them. And I saw them through 2 years, from 4, from 5. You follow them through. And many of them made good in life after that. Yes, they didn't do well in SPM. You can't do much. After so much damage has been done in primary school and all that, you can't do much. Yes, they cannot read and write. Even up to Form 4 and 5, they cannot really read and write. But they made good after that. They earned honest livings. All right? They even earned more than me after that. Honest, good life after that. Virtuous life. Right? So that's what Martin Luther King here is saying, Sometimes it is the honorable thing to speak up against injustice. And it takes great courage to speak up against injustice because it's the norm. That's what everybody goes by. Everybody's happy with that. And we are ruffling it. We are upsetting the norm. It takes great courage. That is also an honorable act. Okay? So Martin Luther King, well, he passed away. He was assassinated. But we have honorable people in this day and age who are still alive. I'm going to show you pictures of 2 of them. Nelson Mandela is one, right? He went to prison for 27 years speaking up for the rights of his people. And now he's got what he wants, right? South Africa is so much better now. On the home front, Lim Guan Eng went to prison too, speaking up for the right of a 15-year-old girl. He went to prison, and when he went to prison, he said, if I have to go to prison, I will go to prison. But I know I'm doing the right thing, speaking up for women's rights. So we have all these heroes amongst us. Okay? They need not be famous people like that. They need not be politicians. They may be ordinary people amongst us. But they act with honor. And that is the right thing to do. Right? Now, let's look at Otapa now. Now remember, Otapa is not fear. Otapa is concern. So from a Buddhist perspective, we are concerned because we understand the law of karma. The law of karma says for every action, there will be an effect. For every intentional speech, thought and action, there will be an effect. There will be an effect. So if we do things with unwholesome intentions, there will be unwholesome effects. For that, we are concerned. We are concerned about the effect. Not the effect purely on us, the effect on other people as well. So the moment we do something unwholesome, there will be an effect on others as well as ourselves. So from a Buddhist perspective, that is our concern. That is one of our concerns. Right? Now, the Buddha taught, as I said, the Buddha has never used fear to teach us. How did the Buddha teach his 7-year-old child, Rahula? The Buddha used this. What is a mirror for? He asked Rahula. This is in the Rahulo Vada Sutta. What is a mirror used for? And Rahula said it's for reflection. That's right. So before we do anything, we must ask ourselves, does it hurt others? Does it hurt ourselves? If it hurts others, if it hurts ourselves, we should not do it. That's how the Buddha taught us, to reflect on our intention. When you want to do something, always ask, what are the consequences? That is Otapa. To have that concern about consequences, not fear. I won't do it because it's bad karma points. You're going to get minus points, like demerit points. Not that, not that. I won't do it because I'm concerned about the consequences on others and on myself. Okay? So that is how the Buddha taught us. Right. Now let's go back to the pyramid there. Why Sila is so important in supporting meditation. Morality supports meditation. How does that work? Now, if you read in the internet, you find that meditation is now an in thing, it's very fashionable, especially in the West. People want to go for meditation because it's hip, it's fashionable. So people go for meditation. And you find that in the West, they say meditation is not very successful. It's not very successful. Why do we go for meditation? For peace of mind, right? To purify our mind and all that. We have our reasons. In the West, they go for meditation for peace of mind, for the same reason. Why is it that it's not very successful in the West? The missing link is they don't tie it in with sila. In the West, meditation is fashionable. You go for meditation classes, you learn how to meditate. They don't tie it in with spiritual practice. Whereas in the East, meditation is normally part of your religious practice. Like Buddhists, for example. Meditation is part of our religious practice. And our religious practice, our foundation is morality. Sila. Sila is very important because without sila, we cannot meditate properly. And the reason is exactly what Ajahn Chah said. Because with morality, our mind can become still and become clear and become quiet. Without morality, the moment we start to meditate, we make ourselves quiet. Okay, we keep ourselves quiet. When our mind is very still and very quiet, that is when we are in touch with our consciousness, our subconscious, and our unconscious. And if we have done a lot of wrong, that is when we are in touch with all the wrongdoings. And you see in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, not up in the air, nor in the middle of the sea, nor going into the cleft in the mountains, nowhere on earth is a spot to be found where you could stay and escape your evil deed. So whatever evil we have done is there, is there stored in our consciousness, our subconscious, our unconscious. It's all stored there. So when we keep our mind very, very, very quiet, we're in touch with that. So all this will surface. And when all this surface, what happens? We get very disturbed. And if our practice of meditation is not supported by sila, we don't know what to do with it. It's not a religious practice, it's just something fashionable. We go there and sit and make ourselves quiet. It's not supported with sila, so we don't know what to do. And that is why in the West, you see, some people go for meditation, after that they become very depressed. Some of them even go and kill themselves. They cannot deal with this, When our mind is very quiet, we're in touch with our subconscious, our unconscious, our evil doings and all that comes up, we don't know what to do with it. That is the whole problem. And that is why it's not very successful in the West. Whereas in the East, it's very successful. Because we tie in with religious practice. So there's morality and there is mental cultivation. Right? So living with blame and guilt is not a very pleasant way to live. We need religion to tell us how to deal with this blame and guilt. Because all of us have done some wrongdoing in the past. That's why we are not perfect. That's why we are still here. All of us have got that. And when we do meditation, we get in touch with all this, And we need to know how to deal with it. So how do we deal with this from a Buddhist point of view? I want to share this with you. This is the teachings of Venerable Thupten Chodron. Can I do anything about my bad karma in this life? So I know I'm in touch with my consciousness, with my subconscious. I know I've done something in my childhood or something bad in the past. Can I do anything about it? From the Buddhist perspective, yes, we can. So what can we do? Repent, but do not dwell or harp on it. So don't dwell on it. Repent. Repent means I'm sorry. I'm sorry for doing that in the past. I was ignorant. I didn't know any better. Forgive yourself. That is very important. Forgive ourselves. Just as the Buddha, the Buddha talked to burglars, murderers and all that. He forgave them. So similarly, we forgive ourselves. So we repent. We must repent. We repair the harm done. That's very important. If we can repair the harm, please repair the harm. For example, there was this person who had quarreled with her relatives for a long, long time. They were not on talking terms. But after this, she came into Buddhism, when she learned about the Sigalovada Sutta and all that, she started feeling very bad. She had not been in touch with her relatives for decades. And those relatives are older than her, She started feeling very bad. That's when the blame and guilt surfaces, Spiritual practice will make us in touch with the blame and guilt because we need to correct it. We need to be in touch with it, not just tuck it in the corner and say, I don't want to address this. No, we need to be in touch with it. But how do you deal with it? So the person spoke to me and said, repair the harm done. Go seek out your relative and apologize. As simple as that. Go seek them out and apologize. And she was scared. She says, what if they don't forgive me? It's okay. The apology is for yourself, actually, not so much for them, so that you have peace of mind. As long as you've done your part, you've apologized, it's fine. She sought them out. They were not in this country anymore. They had migrated. She found them. She wrote an email, she sent a card, and you know what? They forgave her. And all is well. You see, sometimes it's not so hard. You just need to seek them out and repair the harm done. Luckily, they had not passed away, right? What if they have passed away? Okay. Then there are other things to do, don't worry. And after we have repaired the harm done, if we can repair the harm done, determine never to do it again. So it's not like, okay, I've confessed already, this is all wrong. Okay, I'm done, clear, okay, go do again. Then we haven't learned from it. So we must determine not to do it again. Okay, you already know. You know the pain of living with guilt and blame. Don't do it again. So remember, okay, I'm not going to do it again. What's done is done. I've asked for forgiveness, done. Or, that is if her relatives had died, so she couldn't do anything about it. She cannot seek forgiveness. Remedial behavior, do more good. Do more good. And this is actually taught by the Buddha in the Lonapala Sutta. This is one of my favorite suttas. I repeat it all over the place. But then, I like this sutta and I think it's very optimistic. Now, what is the Lonapala Sutta? It's called the Salt Crystal Sutta. The Buddha says, we carry with us salt and water. And this salt and water has been there for countless of lifetimes. We carry this salt and water. What is salt? Salt is all our bad doings, all our wrongdoings. Water is all our wholesome actions, all the good stuff. So we carry with us this sack of salt and water. It's got salt, it's got water. Do we know how much salt we have there? Do we know how much water we've got there? We don't, because we cannot see into our past lives. Right? If we know we've done a lot of bad in this life, yes, a lot of salt accumulated this life. If we know we have done a lot of good this life, or so we think, yes, a lot of water. But we don't know how much salt and water comes from our previous lives. So all of us come with this salt and water. Now when you mix the salt and water, if there's a lot of salt, you mix it and you drink it, what is the taste? It's unbearable, right? It's so salty, it's unpalatable. That is our life now. So why is it that some people have this very difficult life, they are suffering all the time, the water is very salty? That's why. And why is it that some people seem to have a good life, the water is not so salty? Right? So now, we have this salt and water that we carry with us from our previous lives. What can we do? We cannot eliminate the salt, we cannot eliminate the water. We can either add more salt or add more water. That is what we can do now. We have that option now. So are we going to add more salt or more water? Surely going to add more water. So imagine you have this whole cup of salt from previous life and you have 1 cup of water, 1 cup of salt only, it's 50-50. So life isn't too good. But when we do more good, more water, right? So that same amount of salt you put in a pail of water, you put in a whole lake of water because we do so much good. We don't taste the salt anymore. So what we are doing by doing good remedial behavior is to dilute the effect of the salt. Not to remove the salt. If anybody were to tell you, hey, you chant this, the salt will all go away, the person is bluffing you. The Buddha never said that. We cannot remove, but we can dilute the effect. Dilute the effect by doing more good. So it's like that same cup of salt that is in the whole lake of water. You taste the water, you don't even feel the salt. It's been diluted. So I feel this sutta is very optimistic, It tells us, no matter what background we come with, we can always do more good. So it makes the future very optimistic, all full of hope. And it tells us something very important. We are in control. Because nobody can add water for us. It's up to us to do good. That's how we add water to it. Right? So I want to share with you this one. This one is taken from the Majjhima Nikaya. It says, living with blame and guilt again. Monks, As at eventide the shadows of great mountain peaks rest, lie and settle on the earth, so monks do these evil deeds lie and settle on him. The Buddha is telling here that when we do wrong, that blame and guilt is going to be very heavy on us, It is going to be very heavy on us. And when I read this, it made me remember something I did when I was 4 years old. It's confession time. I did something when I was 4 years old. I want to share this with you because when I read this, it made me remember this incident of what I did when I was 4 years. And this incident has been on my mind all this while. Okay? Now what happened when I was 4 years old is that my brother was taking piano lessons. So I used to follow him for piano lessons. At that time, 4 years old, you don't do anything with your life, Not like now, 2 years old, you go for piano lessons. 4 years old, I just followed him for piano lessons. So I would wait on the sofa while he had his lesson. And when I was sitting on the sofa in the piano teacher's house, I saw this black hair clip. You know that black hair clip that ladies used to clip their hair? As a 4-year-old girl, I was fascinated with the black hair clip. And it was under the sofa, It's like somebody dropped it and it went under. Nobody can see it, it's just there. So I was all alone there. I saw the black hair clip and something made me take it because I wanted it so much. I stole the black hair clip. Confession, I stole it. I stole it, so I put it in my pocket and I went home. The moment I went home, I felt terrible. I felt so terrible. I tell you, I can still remember how bad I felt. I felt so terrible when I read this. Yes, that was exactly how I felt. Like a whole mountain weighing on me. I was only 4 years old. I felt so bad because I knew it was wrong. It was wrong to steal. I knew it, and yet because of temptation, I took it. For that whole 1 week, I couldn't sleep at night. I felt so bad, like a whole mountain on me. I did not tell my mother because I was afraid. I was waiting and waiting for the next lesson to go there and quickly put back the clip. And that's what I did. I was waiting. I can remember those 7 days was a nightmare for me, As a 4-year-old child, it was terrible. I waited and waited and waited. I was so eager to go to the piano teacher's house and put it back exactly where I found it. And there, I felt so relieved. The whole mountain was gone from my shoulders. So my point in sharing this with you is, temptation is always there. And sometimes, as a child, I did wrong. But even a child has conscience. Because I remember how I felt. So sometimes when we see, this child doesn't know anything, oh yes, they do. They do. And it's our duty to teach them the right thing. So when we tell a child, hey, don't do, you do, the police will catch you, we are doing them a disfavor. We are teaching them, don't do because you fear the police. So when they're a bit older, they say, where got police in the supermarket? There is no police, there's no CCTV, so I steal. So we're not teaching them the right thing, We're doing a disfavor to the child. So many of these child upbringing things that we say, we need to be very careful what we say because we are inculcating in them, Even when we give reward. When we give reward, I told you my friend, right? 50 cents for turning off the light, 50 cents for turning off the tap, washing the dishes, you get 2 ringgit. You're doing it because of the reward, And when I think of this, I remember when I was a child, I was a study nut. I was really, really crazy into studies. So I used to get first in class. Whenever I got first in class, I never got any reward from my parents, Really, no reward. Nowadays you hear, right, SPM 1A, 100 ringgit, 1,000 ringgit. You get first in class, you get a trip overseas. People use this as either reward or bribery or whatever, I don't know. But when I remember when I was a child, I never got a single reward for doing well in class. And sometimes I wonder, my friend got second place also got reward, and I got first place, how come I got nothing from my parents? But as I grew up later, I realized why. In their own quiet way, they were teaching me something very, very important. They were teaching me that studying hard is your responsibility. You better study hard. You don't study hard because there's a reward waiting for you. You don't do that. You study hard because it's your responsibility to study hard. And my mother, being a teacher, always told us, I only want 2 things from you. You behave yourself and you study hard. That's all. And I made sure I gave her these two things. Behave myself and study hard, because that's what my mother wanted. And we were never rewarded, for getting a string of A's, for being first in class, being first in the school. We were never rewarded. And now I am so thankful for the way my parents brought me up. Because even in my place of work, I do my job as a duty. I don't care about increment, bonuses, promotions. I actually don't care about those things. So in a way, it's good. Because the moment we think of bonuses, increments and all that, why should I do? I'm not going to get bonus this year. Why should I do? Right? Then we're not doing something. Our job is actually noble. It's giving. It's dana. Right? So if we're doing it just because there's monetary reward coming, then it's no longer noble anymore. We miss that opportunity of doing something for the sake of doing it because it's the right thing. Right? So for us who are parents, it's very important how we bring up our children, It is very important. And I'm very thankful my parents never rewarded me. They will buy us presents for different reasons. Birthdays, for no reason, buy you a teddy bear. Never as reward. Merely a present is a present. I'm rewarding you because you're good? No. I'm buying you a present because it's a present. I want to give you a present. Right? So, the Buddha talks about types of fear in the Anguttara Nikaya. The types of fear in people. There is fear of self-reproach. There is fear of others' reproach. There is fear of punishment. There is fear of lower worlds. That's being reborn in lower worlds. These are the types of fear that people have. But if you look at this list, which is the fear that we should have? We shouldn't do things just because we fear being reborn in the lower worlds. That would be a selfish motivation. We shouldn't do things because we fear punishment. That's not a noble reason. We also shouldn't do things because we fear other people's reproach. Oh, other people's going to scold me. Other people's not going to look kindly upon me. We shouldn't do that. Perhaps the only fear we should have is the fear of self-reproach, where we question ourselves. Our conscience prick us. Perhaps the only fear we should have is that fear and not the rest. Right? Okay, so let your conscience be your guide, like Pinocchio, right? The moment he tells a lie, his nose grows longer and longer and longer and longer. And Jiminy Cricket says, let your conscience be your guide. It's so simple. It's from a Disney cartoon, but it's so true. Let our conscience be our guide. So in Buddhist terms, let hiri or tapa be our guide. Right? Now, conscience is what hurts when everything else feels so good. This is when we give in to temptation. Especially young people, right? Sometimes they give in to temptation. So it feels good to be doing wrong. It feels good to be smoking when your parents are not looking. Ooh, it feels good. But something tells us, something hurts inside us, and that is our conscience waking us up. That is hiri and tapa, reminding us, hey, that's not proper, that's not right. There are consequences to your doing. That's our conscience. Okay? And this saying says, conscience is the inner voice that warns us someone may be looking. Who is looking? In the West, they say, God is watching you from afar, right? But in Buddhist teachings, we know there's no God. There's no God watching us. So who is watching us? Our conscience. Ourselves. We are watching ourselves, not someone else. We are watching ourselves. That's our conscience, right? So remember hiri. Hiri is the question that we ask ourselves, is it proper? Is it right? Or tapa is concern for others. If I do this, what are the consequences on others and on myself? These are the two things that will guide us. Now, I want to quote from Alexander Pope because I think this is very profound and very Buddhistic. He talks about honor and shame, and he says, honor and shame from no condition rise. Act well your part, there all the honor lies. So we want honor. Where does it come from? Not from outside. By acting well. Act well your part. There all the honor lies. So it doesn't come from outside conditions, No, somebody gives us a dato or something like that and decorates us. Oh, therefore, I am an honorable person? No. Honor comes from inside. Honor comes from conduct. When we behave appropriately, correctly, we are an honorable person. So we do not need to depend on outside conditions or even recognition from outside. We don't need that. Our conscience will tell us whether we've done the honorable thing or not. Okay? And the Buddha says the same thing in the Dhammapada. What is a Brahman? A Brahman is a noble person. You know, during the Buddha's time, there was the caste system, right? The Brahmins are the highest caste. And if you're born in a family of the Brahmin, you are automatically a noble person. And the Buddha says, no, that is not right. That is not right. So what is a Brahman? Not by method, hair, lineage or birth does one become a Brahman. But by conduct, truthful, righteous and pure, he is a Brahman. So what makes an honorable person is not what's on the outside. By conduct. Our conduct makes us honorable. And the Buddha talks about 4 kinds of bliss, 4 kinds of happiness that we can have. There's the bliss of ownership, the bliss of wealth, the bliss of debtlessness, where we don't owe anyone, that's a kind of bliss. And there is the bliss of blamelessness. But we know nobody is free from blame. Even the Buddha was blamed, right? As the enlightened being, he was blamed. So no one is free from blame. The only way we can have the bliss of blamelessness is when we no longer blame ourselves. So we know our intentions, right? When we do things, we know deep inside. So when we do something out of unwholesome intentions, we blame ourselves for doing wrong. We will not get that bliss of blamelessness. So blamelessness here we are looking at when we do not blame ourselves anymore. And the only reason why we do not blame ourselves is when our conscience is clear. So that we do not have to live with blame and guilt. And that is a bliss. Otherwise, we have those mountains weighing on us. Because we know we've done wrong. And we know we've done wrong, remember? Repair the harm done. Too late to repair the harm done, do more good. So there are always ways. Alright? Always ways to overcome this. Okay, so today's talk is about why should I be good? So I hope I've answered the question, why should I be good? Yeah, from the Buddhist perspective. Because we know it is the right thing to do. Not for reward, right? Not because of fear, not because of greed, not because for acknowledgement, for recognition, but simply because we know it is the right thing to do. Right, now I'll share with you here this saying. It's very interesting. It says here, virtue is its own reward. So why should I be good? Virtue is its own reward. When we do things virtuously, it is its own reward. There is a pleasure in doing good, which sufficiently pays itself. So when we do good, we feel good. Don't you feel good when you do good? You feel good, right? Yeah, that's true. When we do good, we get a sort of happiness within ourselves. We feel good. But we need to question our intention of doing good. Are we doing good because we want to feel good? There's a fine line there, you know. We do good and we feel good. So the feeling good is a consequence of doing good. Oh, today I helped this whole lot of people. After that, I get this good feeling. That's fine. Versus, I want to help this group of people because I want to do good. No, because I want to feel good. There is a difference there. And this is very, very much similar to what Cardinal John Henry says. Now I want to share this with you. It's very, very profound. He says, yes, virtue is its own reward and brings with it the truest and highest pleasure. But if we cultivate it only for pleasure's sake, we are selfish, not religious, and we will never gain the pleasure because we can never have the virtue. You know what he's talking about here? A lot of people do good because they want to feel good. That is actually doing good out of greed, you know. We need to check our intentions there, you know. You see, I want to help people because I want to feel good after that. That's doing out of greed. I want to help people because they deserve the help, so I help them. After that, the bonus is, oh, I feel good. There's a difference there. And this reminds me of what one of my friends, actually a Buddhist friend, told me, you know. He used to join these Chinese New Year trips to the old folks' home and to the orphanages. You know, Chinese New Year, Wesak, all these temples will organize trips to the orphanages, the old folks' home. It gives an opportunity for people to do good, which is fine. He used to follow them on these trips. He said one day an orphan opened his eyes. The orphan pulled him aside and asked him, "Why are you visiting us on every Chinese New Year? I see you coming every Chinese New Year. You visit us. Are you doing it because you want to feel good? Or are you doing it because you really care for us?" The orphan asked him, you know. Even the orphans know. They know that some people are not sincere. You're just doing it for show. Oh, yeah, I want to do good. I get karma points this time. Okay, Chinese New Year, go. Go do, help the old folks. Hello, uncle, how are you? Auntie, how are you? Do it once a year. At other times, don't care. The orphan pulled him aside and asked him, you know, "Why are you doing this? Are you doing because you want to feel good?" And the orphan said, "I think it's because you want to feel good. You don't care about us. You want to feel good. That's why you're doing this." A child said that to him. And it opened his eyes, you know, and he confessed to me. He says, "I think the child is right. So I'm not going to do this until my intentions are pure. That I'm going there because I care for these children. Now I'm just going because I want to feel good." You see that difference there? We need to check our intention, you know. If we say we want to do things for noble reasons, we need to check our intention. The intention has to be that pure. It has to be that pure. Then we can say we're doing the honorable thing. Otherwise, there's still greed tied in there. Right? So what Cardinal John Henry Newman says here is so true, you know, especially the last part. He says, if we are only doing it for pleasure's sake, we are selfish. We are not religious. We will never gain that true happiness because we can never have that virtue. So we're doing something out of virtue. We're doing something out of greed because we want to feel good. Right? So intention. That is the important thing. Whatever we do, we got to check our intention. And remember, nobody can judge our intention except ourselves. And that's where your conscience tells you, are you really doing this out of pure intention, or is there some greed in there? Some greed, you know, some pride, some ego in there. We need to check it ourselves. Right. So, I want to end today's talk with a little story. It's about temptation. Now, you recognize this, right? The 4th of July is George Washington. We all know the story, right? When George Washington was a little boy, he took the axe and chopped down his father's favorite cherry tree. And then when his father came back, his father was very angry because that's the father's favorite tree. So the father asked him, who chopped down this tree? And George Washington, being a very honest child, he admitted. He said, "Father, I cannot tell a lie. It was I who chopped down your favorite tree." And he said, "If you have to punish me, go ahead and punish me." So it was a very honorable thing that this child did. He was not afraid, not like me, go and steal the hair clip and dare not tell my mother. He's definitely not more honorable. So he admitted, he said, "I chopped down your cherry tree." And thereafter he became the president, the first president of the US. So what did George Washington say? "Father, I cannot lie. I cannot tell a lie. I was the one who chopped down your tree." Now, Mark Twain, known for his wit, his humor, and his cynicism, says he has a twist to this story. And this is what he says. He says, "I am different from Washington. I have a higher, grander standard of principle. Washington could not lie. I can, but I won't." See, you see the difference here? Washington could not lie. And most of us still can lie. We're probably here, what Mark Twain says, you know, we can lie, but we won't. So the temptation is always there to do wrong. The temptation is there. How easy it is to take the money. Nobody's looking. But we won't do it because we are guided by hiri and otapa. It's not honorable, there are consequences to others and to ourselves. How easy it is to break the first precept when nobody's looking because the mosquito is flying around you and really irritating you. The mosquitoes, nobody's looking, swat, gone. Nobody saw. Broke the first precept. How easy it is to do that when nobody's looking. We can, but we won't. Why is it we won't? It's not the honorable thing to do. The poor mosquito wants to live. And there are consequences. The mosquito is going to suffer. It's going to be squashed to death. There are consequences. Right? So when we use hiri or notapa to guide us, we will go on the right path. That is our conscience. Right? So thank you very much for your attention.